in the high desert in the great American Southwest.
Welcome to Coast AM. John, welcome to the program. It's good to have you with us. You're with us.
Welcome to Coast PM, the number one unofficial Coast AM podcast, where two brothers listen to Coast AM. My name is Paul, and I'm the guy that actually listens to Coast, and also your resident skeptic.
And I'm Chris, the guy who doesn't listen to Coast and color commentates.
And believes most of it, I think.
Oh, believes some of it, dude. Definitely believes more than you do. That's for sure.
Definitely more than me, I would say. But,
yeah.
Well, Chris, as you know, last episode, we did not get through Graham Hancock.
The Grammy just is too in depth that you thought that you could fit it all into an hour you're bad.
That's
for sure.
My own ignorance that I thought we could do that in the normal time allotted.
The genius of Graham Hancock is unparalleled in the conspiracy circles.
You know, he's got a lot going on, so that's something. But to recap, everyone, if you have not listened to part one of our Graham Hancock episode, go back and listen to part one. But essentially, Graham Hancock is a guy who says that there were civilizations around before modern civilization that got wiped out by big rocks that came and hit North America.
Hit the ice, the ice shelf.
And it was bad, and they all died.
Yes.
So before we get into that, though, Chris, we got to go visit our old friend Tim Banal.
Tim boy!
On the Coast to Coast blog for our reading corner.
Timmy!
So today we have a special report from Tim Banal on Coast to Coast blog. Virginia man baffled by series of cryptic messages mailed to his home.
Oh.
And as a newly ordained Virginia resident, this one spoke to me, and I'm now on the lookout for weird messages. So from the Coast to Coast blog. In a perplexing story out of Virginia, a man has received a series of increasingly cryptic messages pinned by a mysterious individual calling themselves Molly May, and he has no idea who is sending them or why. Mason Cox reportedly received the first piece of peculiar, I can't say that word.
Peculiar.
Thank you. Mail back in March in a form of a typewritten postcard featuring a very weird message that begins with the unsettling observation that word has been getting around that you are getting pretty good with drones.
For a second, I thought that Molly May wasn't that the Rod Stewart song, but I believe that's actually Maggie May.
I believe you are correct that it is Maggie May.
All right. So Molly May's asking about this dude's use of drones.
Yes, which Molly May probably is from Virginia, because that sounds like a very Virginia.
That does sound like a very Southern name at the very least.
So the message goes on to propose that Cox use his UAV to harass the writer's boss in order to help them get a raise. The postcard was signed Molly May and understandably left the man with far more questions than answers, especially as more messages from this person kept showing up at his door.
Did this dude actually does he do drones?
I don't believe he does drones. No, he does not.
Oh, okay. So this is maybe mistaken identity.
Well, here's the weird thing. From the gentleman who's receiving this, it has my name, correct spelling, exact address, including the apartment number. He noted of the mysterious postcard.
That's strange.
It was truly meant for my unit, so it had to be me. I don't know why it was me. Cox didn't have very long to ponder the puzzling messages before he had another clue on his hands as a second card from Molly arrived a few days later.
He got a raging clue.
A raging clue came through the mail. It detailed some kind of dispute at a cherry blossom festival, including an individual named Terry. A few weeks later, Molly wrote again with another odd message, which lamented finding one of those trash bags and ominously declared that I need you to do your magic. If you have to get the widow widowed, I'd say go for it.
What?
Which sounds like Molly May's telling him to kill someone.
The widowed but you're not if you're a widow, you don't get widowed.
If you have to get the widowed, I'd say go for it. I don't know. That's the term widowed
definitely
sounds
saying,
like
definitely saying you need to kill this lady, but you don't widowing somebody. You know what I mean? It's a strange verb to use.
maybe it's a widow that got remarried
to a woman.
No, she's a widow. She
She's
gets
a widow.
remarried and then she needs to get widowed, which means kill her partner.
Kill her husband.
That's what I'm reading that as is
Okay.
go kill her husband. Do your magic.
Go kill her second husband.
Yes.
Okay. Interesting.
So the curious one-way correspondence continued with a fourth postcard containing a message referencing candy corn and venison, as well as the worrisome note written in all caps. Marge found out was the message in all caps.
Marge found out.
Marge found out.
Has this dude tried like putting all these names into like a search?
They haven't been able to find anything. So Cox
Nothing.
received the most recent piece of mail from Molly last month, and it may be the most mysterious to date. It contains a letter with a photograph and an almost threatening message written on the back, wherein the writer ordered him to do it or someone else will. It's not only a family secret, it's business.
Dude, this sounds like somebody who may either be schizophrenic or bored.
It probably one of the two. The message that said it's not a family secret, it's business. That also contained a set of GPS coordinates that led Cox to a park in Richmond, though he found nothing there that might help shed light on the situation.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool though.
Kind of fun. Possibly mystified.
I was going to say this is kind of a weird geocache.
It is a bit of a geocache. Here's a creepy message, go find the location. If only there was like a note there, like another postcard, that would have been more fun, I think.
Yeah.
It's kind of like an augmented reality game.
Yeah.
In a way.
Bit of a clue at least, right?
So possibly mystified by the message that he has been receiving from Molly, Cox turned to social media in the hopes that someone could figure out what they meant and why they have been sent to him. Within the world of web sleuthing, his story has generated considerable interest, but no one has managed to crack the case. While one might think Cox is uneasy about the nature of Molly's messages, he expressed far more fascination than fear over them, though obviously hopes that the series does not have some sort of dangerous conclusion. Addressing
what
the writer.
Social media did he go to? Does it say?
It doesn't say. I'm assuming.
Dude,
Facebook.
you got to go to Reddit or 4chan, man. Those freaking nerds would figure it out in like 2 days.
I'm a big fan of crowdsourced mysteries. I think they're fun. And like you said, those nerds do tend to figure things out.
Dude, I remember when like somebody somehow got their hands on a Shia LaBeouf art film that he made for art school when he went back to college, and they like found out the exact location where he was filming and like kept on messing with him in the shoot.
Oh, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
People are fun, I guess.
And like, dude, all it was like they somehow like figured out there was like a couple of airplanes that went past, and they were able to like directly geolocate exactly where this place was from that. And so these nerds would figure it out in no time.
Yeah, that is some serious internet nerd shit. There's a documentary on Netflix called Don't Fuck with Cats, and it's a bunch of internet nerds trying to track down a guy who's killing cats online, and they do very similar things where they can find these tiny little pieces, like nail down which country he's in and like which like street corner he's on by the gas station. You can see in the background of the video, things like that. It's pretty cool.
Craziness, dude.
Not killing cats. The internet sleuthing is cool.
Yeah, don't kill cats.
Don't kill cats.
Don't kill cats.
This is an anti-cat murder podcast.
We frown upon that.
Big cat guys over here. So addressing the writer through a local TV station.
On that statement, but go ahead.
Cox implored Molly to identify themselves and said that if this is all for fun, we are having fun. We are enjoying it. But if not, we would like to know who you are just so we can put a stop to it. And that is the creepy postcards being sent to the sky, which here's what my hope is that this is some sort of augmented reality game, because that's a lot more fun. Like a little mystery. Everyone has a good time, but we need to put some clues out there so that this, the internet sleuths can find it.
Better clues. There should have been something at the park.
There should have been. That is the biggest mess up. And
there should have been something.
Well, I've watched a lot of things about augmented reality games, like that cicada one was pretty cool. Like there's been quite a few things where you can.
The Jejun Institute.
That one is fantastic. What was that documentary
super
called?
Cool. I think it's called The Institute.
Yeah, that was a great documentary, man.
Yeah.
That was a lot. Like I would have loved to do a game like that.
Yeah.
And I would love to be looped in by some guy just mailing me a postcard, and then now I'm in the game.
Right.
I didn't ask to be in the game, but I'm in the game.
Yeah, you're in the game.
Yeah, and then I start like losing touch with the reality, and I get way too into it.
What if this person just thinks like they're like, oh, they'll know this is clues, and like is leaving different stuff on the postcard, and this guy just is not getting it at all?
Like, dude, do you think he's taking like a black light to it? There's probably like secret ink or something.
Secret ink, the heat ink,
ink.
Put a lighter to it.
Yeah.
Like candy corn and venison.
That's weird.
That's gotta mean something.
Those two things don't go together. You don't just mention candy corn and venison, man.
They don't go. Well, first of all, no one eats candy corn anymore.
Yeah.
That's like a 1950s candy.
And it's also not in season. It's in season in Halloween, man.
That's right.
You can't buy it.
One time.
They stopped making candy corn in 1970. It's just a warehouse full of shit, and they just slowly release
full of it.
It's like diamonds. It's all hoarded.
Yeah. Good diamond reference.
I try to bring up diamond markets as often as I can.
The beers.
All right. Well, Chris, are you ready to get into the rest of our Graham Hancock episode?
I mean, the question is, are you ready?
I don't know if I'm ready.
I don't think you are.
Probably not, but we're going to get to it anyways.
Grambino. Let's go.
So next on our queue of Graham Hancock clips is going to be him talking about South America, right? So
yes,
this episode of Graham is about his book specifically focused on Americas and how the ancient civilization was from the Americas. But that's not just North America, right? It's also South America.
Let me give a little taste before we start, because I found this interesting. Did you know we know almost nothing about the Olmecs, which is the precursor civilization to the Aztecs and the Mayan?
No, I haven't looked into that.
It's pretty fascinating. Like the only real evidence that we have of the Olmecs is these giant heads they carved.
And we were like, something was here.
Someone
did something.
And like they probably built some of the first pyramids, because there's like tales from Mayans and Aztecs, and they would be like, yeah, this was here and we just built on top of it. And everyone was like, no, silly Mayans. And now people are like, yeah, maybe somebody else still did build these.
Yeah, that's interesting. Well, that's a bit like what happened in England, although it's a bit different. But in England back in like 1100, 1200, when they had all these giant carvings and shit, and it was actually the Romans who did it, but they were like, no, they were just giants who used to live here.
Right.
Instead of being like, no, there used to be an empire that wasn't Christian, like the pagans used to be here.
Yeah,
they didn't want to admit that. But it's like, oh, there's big heads. We just built a tower on top of it. Whatever, dude. I feel like the Mayans would have been cool. So there's a lot of evidence, especially in South America.
So it's things like this that come down to us from remote prehistory that tell us that there was a civilization before that knew stuff that our ancestors are not supposed to have known, and that encoded this and deliberately preserved it as a kind of puzzle or time capsule. I think these time capsules are all over the world, and of course Giza, the Great Pyramid, the Great Sphinx, what lies beneath the Great Sphinx. They're all part of this. But the problem is, where was that civilization based? And I think that the evidence is compelling that it was in the Americas. I'm not talking only about North America. I'm also talking about South America.
Mm-hmm.
So South America is still a big part of this story.
Oh yeah, big time, dude. Huge part.
Yep.
Can't have a North American story without a South American story.
Which is nice. If you are going to be Western centric, you got to include South America as well.
Yeah.
Which I think is where the Mormons fucked up.
Yeah, dude. I mean, they made the Garden of Eden in Missouri, dude.
That makes no sense. Have you been to Missouri, man?
Actually, dude, Southwest Missouri, right there in like the Little Boot, dude, is absolutely stunning.
Yeah, but wouldn't the Amazon jungle be a way cooler Garden of Eden?
Dude, Graham has some super cool stuff on Amazon, so let's get there.
All right. So he talks a little bit about the earthworks. He doesn't get a ton into the Amazon in this, but he talks about it a little bit.
Huge earthworks, gigantic geometrical constructions, squares, an enormous square enclosing a circle, the kind of thing that we associate with henges in old Europe. Enormous geometrical earthworks. We find that they're turning up in the middle of the Amazon jungle where nobody suspected this to be the case. They're the sign of a high civilization present in the Amazon jungle. It turns out the Amazon itself is a man-made jungle. It isn't just a natural phenomenon. It's been carefully cultivated, nurtured, and looked after by human beings.
Oh, good, dude. So you got a little piece of that part, because that's one of my favorite things about the Amazon that Graham talks about.
Is that it's man-made?
Well, I would say that it's probably a little bit less than man-made, but that it's like agroforestry, that you'll find like whole sections of like nut trees and stuff like that. And his stuff about, so another thing that we didn't really talk about in the last episode is that Graham is super into drugs, like big time.
Yeah.
Does he talk about that?
Yeah, we will get to that, but you can go ahead. You go ahead.
So some of the interesting stuff that he discusses is one of the big kind of psychedelic, psychotropic drugs in South America is ayahuasca. It was used by South American medicine men. It's still used. It's supposed to be an insane trip. They used to use it as kind of like a coming of age thing and stuff like that. But ayahuasca, to make it, is incredibly chemistry heavy. You have to mix together several different plants and do it in several different processes to end up extracting what ends up being ayahuasca. And Graham claims that there's like whole sections of these plants kind of all growing together throughout the Amazon. So just some interesting little things like that. And, that's one of his other claims for there having to be something more advanced before the Mayans or the Olmecs, because creating ayahuasca is so difficult to do, yet these Stone Age, Bronze Age civilizations were able to do it.
Well, ayahuasca is the one that you have to actually you put all this shit in like a giant pot and you have to stew the pot. I've seen videos of people going and doing it before. Yeah. So it is a pretty labor intensive process, which is interesting. But no, we will get into ayahuasca and aliens in a little bit.
All right. Sweet.
So one of my favorite parts of this is where Graham talked about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yes.
And how that was one of the very first things that he actually started digging into very heavily.
Yeah, it's like one of his first books is about the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, because he's been doing this for 30 years, he said. Somewhere like 30 years.
Longer than that, man. I think his first stuff was like in the 80s. I mean, Fingerprints of the Gods was early 90s.
Yeah, he's been doing it a long time. But it all started with the classic Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, baby.
And it turns out that the claim to possess the Ark of the Covenant is central to Ethiopian culture, that every church in Ethiopia contains a replica or a model of the Ark of the Covenant or of the tablets of stone that were within it, and that it's fundamental to Ethiopian Christianity, which is odd because it's a pre-Christian relic. So I decided to investigate this I found that academics were very dismissive of the Ethiopian claim, but the more I looked into it, the presence of indigenous Jewish population in Ethiopia, the so-called Falasha, is practicing a very Old Testament form of Judaism.
I have no idea what he's talking about there. Do you know what he's talking about?
It's like, if I remember correctly, it's like a very mystical Judaism. So like in line with the Kabbalah, kind of.
Yeah, I didn't fact check that portion. It sounded a little odd to me, but anyways.
Different kinds of evidence led me to conclude that there is merit to the Ethiopian claim. And along the way, I was forced to consider what was the Ark of the Covenant itself.
This is the fun part.
And what it seemed to me to be was a piece of technology which could strike people dead with bolts of fire, which created terror and awe in the enemies of Israel. It seemed to me like a piece of technology that was being used for deliberate purposes. And then I had to ask myself, well, where on earth did this technology come from, 3,000 years ago in biblical times? And that's what started me on the quest for a lost civilization.
It all started with the Ark of the Covenant, dude.
Dude, where else would it start, man? I mean, Indiana Jones pointed the way.
That's what I was going to say. I think that what he's talking about is he watched Indiana Jones and was like, that's cool.
That's
and
cool.
Probably real.
Has to be real.
Let's build off of Indiana Jones.
Well, there's actually a temple in Ethiopia that claims to have the Ark of the Covenant. It's like highly guarded, incredibly secret. The kind of crazy. All of like the lead, I don't know if he's a bishop or whatever, the head priest of the church is blind, and like they're apparently always blind.
That's really strange. Well, it must be because the light weapon is so blinding.
That's right. That's exactly right.
That's the explanation, I think, is that,
yeah.
Well, so here's the question. Does the Ark make you blind, or do they specifically pick blind priests to oversee this?
I believe their claim is that the Ark is making them blind.
Dude, that's an awful gig. I don't want that gig.
Well, dude, but you get to be close to God.
I mean, does that give you any sort of like being close to the Ark? Does that
feel his power?
Does that give you any sort of power or some sort of like special feeling?
Well, if it was created by if it was actually created by an ancient civilization, then no, right? Not at all. It's probably like a nuclear weapon that is like just radiating radiation.
For some reason, all of these guys that take care of the Ark are all getting cancer and boils. We don't know what's happening. Yeah. Why is their skin falling off?
Right.
Well, but doesn't that go contrary to his previous statements about this advanced civilization not being more advanced than our civilization in the 17th century? Because it's a high-tech piece of equipment that he's describing. Is a giant light weapon.
So I mean, I said nuclear. Well,
no, but regardless, what he's describing is way more advanced than what we were doing in the 17th century.
So you're getting into the part where Graham believes that this civilization was more in tune to using the energy from the earth and using the energy from the solar system.
Okay, but this sounds more advanced than us.
In ways, yes.
Well, if you're able to make light weapons, that's pretty hardcore, dude.
Right, but again,
you're telling me they made a light weapon without a computer?
Yeah.
There's no microchips in that thing?
None.
What's it made of?
I have no idea, dude. You think I'm going into Ethiopia, like knocking on temple doors saying, hey, let me see, I'm a Mzungu. Let me in and see the Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, nice Swahili drop.
They don't allow anyone into this place.
Nice Swahili drop. So this is an analog weapon.
Analog weapon, dude.
Because what he's saying, because if we were to say that this was brought by aliens, okay, or it's a super high tech piece of equipment, because it's more like an Atlantis thing where Atlantis like had a bunch of high tech stuff. that's a little harder for me to believe that this is human civilization without any outside help, including God or aliens, and they made an analog light weapon.
And again, I think that Graham is saying that it's a light weapon. I don't know what it is.
I like the alien explanation for the arc better.
I mean, they could have found a big old fat piece of uranium rock, dude, put it in a thing. And, like I said, it's just like radiation poisoning.
It's giving everyone that takes care of it cancer.
Yeah.
That's a possibility. But Graham goes on, because a lot of the questions that were asked, are it's kind of like, where's the evidence? And according to him, the evidence is everywhere. We are just not looking, right?
That's right.
We're not looking for it.
Egypt has been a huge focus of my attention for many, many years. I keep returning there. It's an extraordinary, magical, enchanted place filled with secrets. Indonesia, fascinating. Australia, all over the world, there are bits and pieces of this puzzle scattered far and wide. I've made it my business to try and put them together. It's annoyed archaeologists. They call what I do pseudoscience.
I can definitely see how this will annoy archaeologists.
Oh yeah, dude, they hate him. They absolutely hate him.
They could not like this guy. They're like, this son of a bitch. I wonder, like, big mainstream kind of pop archaeologists, how often they get like Graham type questions.
I would imagine actually more frequently than we think. I would imagine that, especially in like universities, that professors and stuff would get a lot of Graham Hancock questions.
Well, because the frustrating thing for them too will be the fact that people will bring up stuff and you have to know what it is to be able to discuss it.
Right.
So they're probably having to do a bunch of Graham Hancock research.
Right.
If they're getting these questions all the time. But sorry, I interrupted the clip.
If you look me up on Wikipedia, you'll see that I'm regarded as a purveyor of pseudoscientific theories.
Yes,
I regard that as a very lazy way to criticize my work, to just sort of write it off as pseudoscience, pseudo-archaeology. I don't even claim to be an archaeologist. I'm a reporter, and my job is to report the facts as I see them.
So he's got a bit of a chip on his shoulder.
Oh yeah, dude.
All these haters, dude.
Oh yeah, dude. Huge chip on their shoulder. And the thing is that a lot of the people who do refute him, like go directly after him, like do use they like attack his character, instead of like just saying like, oh, those stone blocks in Indonesia are most likely to be geological or something like that. They'll actually attack Graham and like not really go for some time after the evidence.
According to Graham, at least.
No, dude, I'm telling you, he had, there was a really interesting debate on the Joe Rogan podcast with, I think Graham was there, Randall Carlson was there, and then these two guys that, wrote a whole dissertation refuting Graham and Randall Carlson.
Joe Rogan had all these people on at the same time.
Yeah. And it was actually really interesting. And the one guy, hated Graham and actually published an article online that they were supposed to be collaborating on, and just had all this stuff attacking Graham as a person. And the other researcher was like super ticked about it. He was like, I'm sorry, like that isn't what I would have edited all that stuff out. It should have never been published publicly, blah, 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 blah. I mean, it was actually pretty fascinating because Graham kind of got him, dude.
Well, I don't think that's Graham getting them. I think that's someone behaving inappropriately.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
You shouldn't do that.
But I imagine that isn't the first time that that's happened.
Well, yeah, probably not, because I'm sure he's pissing people off. But from here, we move into some callers.
Oh, oh, dude, how many alien calls does he get? Because I bet he just gets so frustrated.
Not that many actually. A lot of the colors were kind of innocuous, and the answers weren't that interesting, so I didn't put too many of them in here. But there are things like, so Graham, do you think that we should explore the ocean more? And then Graham's going to be like, yes, we should definitely explore the ocean more.
Right,
shit like that. So
right.
Most of them are we didn't get a lot of like dragon type questions, which are always my favorite.
Yeah.
But we did get one that was specifically about a city or a potentially lost city off the coast of Cuba, which I was not familiar with. So I had to do a little bit of research on it. But we will jump into that question from our caller, Ernie.
Has there been any more, let's say, research done on that lost city just off the coast of Cuba that they found I think it's about 2,000 feet below sea level?
Yeah. Very interesting question. And the answer to that question is no. As with so many underwater anomalies, they tend to be dismissed as artifacts of sonar, anything other than what they actually appear to be, which is the ruins of a civilization.
So an interesting note here when he says that they're dismissed as artifacts of sonar, apparently sonar really sucks, which I didn't realize.
Yeah.
But when you're that deep, obviously you can't take pictures, right? Because there's no light. So they use sonar to try and do images, but sonar itself is only like 40% accurate in actually depicting what's there. It's just a really inefficient way of doing things.
I mean, Paul, that's why they've been able to have the search for Nessie in the Loch Ness monster on History Channel for 20 years.
Yeah.
Because they're like, well, there's some kind of big thing down there, but we can't tell what it is.
If you squint, that sort of looks like a fin.
Yeah, exactly.
Who really knows? So that's just a fun sonar fact for you.
And I don't think LiDAR works particularly well in the water.
Yeah, I don't think it would, which would be basically laser sonar, right? Like
Laser
light-based
sonar, right?
Yeah. So there's not a lot of good ways of getting images under the ocean.
Right.
It's a bad place to take pictures, which if you do look up the lost Cuban city, most of the pictures that you see are artists' renditions of what they think it would look like based on the sonar images. Because at first when I looked it up, it was a bunch of very crystal clear images of like pyramids and like all these straight lines. But if you find the actual sonar images, it's much less clear. It's not as interesting looking, but it still is anomalous because it's very straight lines that are appearing multiple times. There are pyramid looking things. So it is a strange thing for sure.
Nature doesn't love straight lines.
No, they don't. They should like straight lines more.
Yeah.
Just build houses for us. I'm tired of having to make them.
Not the only example there. I've dived on underwater ruins all around the world, in the Mediterranean, off the coast of India, off the coast of Japan.
This guy's gone everywhere.
Not in Cuba, and that site is too deep to scuba dive anyway. You would need to get down there in a sub. But all over the world, underwater, there are the remains of large constructions. And obviously those large constructions were not created underwater. They were put there at a time when sea level was much lower than it is today. The interesting thing about the Cuban site is its fantastic depth. Sea level rose 400 feet at the end of the Ice Age between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago. But we're looking at a site that's maybe 2,000 feet deep, and that suggests some other cataclysmic force must have been at work. Perhaps some massive subsidence of the land was at work, or perhaps even we're looking at the remnants of an even older lost civilization, something that goes back not hundreds of thousands of years, but perhaps millions of years. Who knows?
Millions of years old, man.
Yes.
Going way back.
Way back. Way back.
Which is what, because of the depth of this, that is basically what the mainstream archaeologists said when this came out too, is that like there's no way that this could be anything from civilization because it's so deep.
It's
the amount of time it would take something to drop that far is insane.
Right.
So at this point, our host George Norrie drops what could be an interesting solve for this little riddle.
Did you hear stories that the remnants that people think might be a lost city down there in the oceans near Cuba really are the 1962 remnants of the Cuban Missile Crisis. When they dismantled everything, they just dumped it into the ocean.
I've read that, and that may be the case. Not everything underwater is a lost civilization.
So not everything is,
Boom,
but a lot of things are.
Hey, listen, I'll say this much. You really should read about the work that he did off the coast of India. Incredibly fascinating.
All right, I only have so much time in the day, but I'll work on checking that out.
Incredibly fascinating.
Well, and what's interesting about this case here is that there was something that was found by this telecommunications company that was doing work in tandem with the Cuban government, and they found this weird thing, and no one really knows what it is, but no one has been able to go look at it again. Part of the reason why is because you need Cuba's permission to go down there, I believe. So
right.
I have a sneaking suspicion that this Cuban Missile Crisis thing is correct, and that someone in the Cuban government was like, "You motherfuckers, we dropped that so deep, and these assholes just stumble into it off our coast."
Oops.
So I really, oops, our bad. We put a nuke down there.
Yeah.
I like that explanation the most. That is the most fun explanation.
The Russians gave us a bunch of nukes, and we had to get rid of them quick.
Yeah, we had to get rid of it. We had to drop it. We weren't trying to get blown up. We just threw it off the coast. We're like, this is so deep, no one's ever going to find it. And then some dude and his wife just stumble into it and are like, what's this? And they publish it online.
Sometimes you do got to love the internet.
Yeah, to me, that's the most fun theory. I think that's actually more fun than very old civilization. Is just a dumbass bureaucracy getting their accident stumbled into.
Dude, I mean, also give it up to George Norrie. I mean, dude has his finger on the pulse on a lot of different stuff.
Well, and he hears a lot. He's at the crux of a lot of things,
right,
on this show, and he hears a lot of different people. So he does drop little fun facts every once in a while. My other favorite is when he tries to make connections between guests and different theories, like Hollow Earth theory that he brings up, things like that, to other guests. And then the best part is when guests do the yes and, right?
Yeah.
When they continue the thing, like, yeah, dude, Hollow Earth definitely could be real. But that doesn't always happen. That's not quite as fun.
Well, dude, I feel like to be in the conspiracy world, you have to be a great yes-ander.
Which, to Graham's credit, he doesn't do that.
No,
he has his lane. He does not break out of that lane.
No, dude, he will not. He will not. Because like the alien stuff, dude, he will not yes and aliens at all.
He shuts it down, which is actually a great segue into our next clip.
I've listened to a lot of your shows, and I've had lots of time to think about this stuff. And I'm an artist, so I get kind of crazy with my imagination.
That's great.
But I keep thinking about, gosh, what are some of these ancient civilizations? What was their life like? What were their architecture, their building, all those kinds of things. And the question that keeps coming up to me, because Coast to Coast covers a lot of different subjects. And I know Graham is not a big fan of the UFO alien theories, but I wonder if some of these earlier civilizations are still around, and we may perceive them in our pop culture as UFOs, but maybe they're just somebody that's been here for 20,000 years, and their technology is so far advanced from us that it appears, that they're from another planet, but they're really from this planet. And
where are they then?
I wonder if you've come across any, I want to say evidence, but I don't know if that's the right word, that would support that theory.
So I think this guy's got a pretty fun little idea here, right?
Yeah.
And I've always kind of liked that, where UFOs were humans that are just really advanced and that we can't see them and they're kind of just watching us.
Right.
Or potentially from the Hollow Earth is another one. That's pretty
well, or they live in like an underwater civilization deep under the Marianas Trench or something like that, right?
Yeah, and I think the reason why I like that so much is because, and Chris, we've both read quite a bit of H.P. Lovecraft. A lot of Lovecraft stories are based around ideas like that, where there is an ancient civilization. Some of them are still here. We just can't see them.
Right.
right? But they're up in Antarctica or they're below the ocean, something like that.
Let me guess. Graham hates this idea.
He does not like this idea at all.
Are they in the hollow earth, Graham?
Oh, and and then George brings up Hollow Earth, which he should have known better. He should have known better.
He's about to go nuts.
I'm not a proponent of the Hollow Earth theory. I think the surface of the Earth is where we live.
No yes and.
Yeah.
Didn't do it.
It's just not been a subject that I've investigated.
He's being nice, though.
As to UFOs and aliens, of course, the universe is filled with life. There's no doubt about that. Planet Earth is not alone as the only inhabited planet with intelligent species upon it. Although, mind you, our intelligence is very questionable sometimes. I think the universe is full of life, but I don't need extraterrestrials to explain the anomalies and the mysteries that I've confronted in our past. I think a lost human civilization fits the bill.
He doesn't need it, dude.
Yeah.
He doesn't need your goddamn aliens.
No, he doesn't need it. He doesn't need it.
But
you're right, dude. I think, it really is kind of within the conspiracy realm, kind of a noble thing, right? Because you just don't run across it all that much, and people being like, I love that idea. I'm going to take that idea. I'm going to take that idea and just kind of like create this like mash of just like conspiracy nonsense.
Especially in the internet age, where so many of these conspiracies become big tent conspiracies because everyone online is contributing to the conspiracy. It's very much a bottom-up approach of creating this narrative, where back in the day, you used to have one guy who writes a book or one guy who makes a video that all these people are
Behold a pale horse,
exactly, right? And that was the way of getting this out. So there was one figure that was the one kind of promoting this, and then everyone else was taking kind of the parts that they liked, but he still controlled the narrative, he or she, mostly dudes, if we're all being honest. And at this point, people are all just contributing online on whatever, forum or website that they're on. So it can become a multi-headed beast at some point of all of these different things, a lot of which may not have anything to do with each other, but they're all just weaved together in a giant web.
Well, I mean, look at QAnon, right? I think QAnon is one of the best kind of stories to aid in this idea, right? When it was just one guy coming up with it, you could stay a little bit more in reality.
Mm-hmm.
But when you outsource it to, dozens, if not hundreds, all of a sudden you get these like ridiculous stories of celebrities, getting put into prisons and holograms taking their places, and like the storm and all that stuff. Like a lot of that stuff was inherently ridiculous.
Yeah, and the interesting thing about QAnon is that the only central figure was Q, who was just posting really cryptic things, and then the rest of it completely crowdsourced.
Right.
Everyone was just contributing to the narrative.
Yeah.
It's like a big creepypasta that everyone's playing together.
Right.
So aliens may be real, according to Graham, but the only way you're going to find them is by taking DMT.
Yes.
Then we must ask ourselves also, what are aliens? I've had many experiences with ayahuasca, the powerful visionary brew of the Amazon, and with dimethyltryptamine, DMT, which is the active ingredient of ayahuasca, but which can also be accessed in a pure form smoked.
So you like DMT when you use the chemical name of DMT.
He wrote a whole book about it, dude.
Did he?
He wrote a whole book about it.
No wonder he's on Joe Rogan. They must be best friends.
Yeah, dude. He wrote a whole book about it.
It's the most Joe Rogan-y thing.
Yeah.
And these change our consciousness to the point where we find ourselves interacting with intelligent entities. The ancient cultures called them the little teachers, or the ancient teachers of mankind. Maybe through consciousness, we and our ancestors have accessed another level of reality. I don't believe that these visions that we encounter in deeply altered states of consciousness are just fabrications of our minds. I think it's more a question of retuning the receiver wavelength of the mind so that we can access other levels of reality that are normally closed to us. And in those other levels of reality, we can receive teachings and gain access to wisdom that might otherwise be closed to us. So in that sense, I am open to an influence on humanity, but that influence rather experienced through vision.
Yeah, so taking a lot of DMT and we can talk to aliens, which is kind of fun.
Well, and I don't even know, because if you notice, he keeps on saying entities. Like, he won't ever say like extraterrestrial or alien, because they're probably like interdimensional or something along those lines, which I think is kind of an interesting thought. I don't know. I've never done DMT and I haven't done ayahuasca, so I can't say anything about these visions or these entities that come to people when you do them.
Yeah, but I just have a hard time believing that we're actually having anything other than a really strong hallucination, you know,
just being poisoned.
Yeah, and I think that it can open up your own minds, but in terms of externalizing communication with other entities, I just don't quite understand how that would work unless we are accepting the existence of some sort of godlike entity or creator, something like that. If we're working from that sort of structure, then yeah, maybe that can, help us communicate in some way. But in terms of like an actual, entity that has evolved somewhere on another planet in the universe, I just don't understand how this would help us communicate with them. Like if we're living in like the actual world.
I think it would be more like I said, extra dimensional multiverse type stuff, and not like taking this drug and now I'm talking to like Klingon number 9 in the Alpha Tau system.
That would be fun though, if you could just take the drug and start talking to aliens.
Yeah, I don't think it's like an international or an intergalactic cell phone and you're like, who should I talk to today?
But even interdimensional beings, like, what does that actually mean, right? And how do you even define their existence? Like, how could you ever actually prove that you were communicating with something?
Looks like we're gonna have to go down to South America and take some ayahuasca, baby.
That may be the only answer we have to take.
We start making some money, dude. We're gonna do a little field trip.
Well, this is the problem. No one's ever asked how to prove their existence while they're on the trip. We just have to remember while we're on the trip.
Yeah,
we're
gonna have to write down some questions.
Yeah, and start cranking through them. And we also need to ask for some sort of high piece of technology, right?
Yeah.
Like, give me some sort of equation that we don't know yet, right?
Yeah.
Some E = MC² type shit,
right?
I got to come back with something for the people.
But the problem is, we wouldn't even like, especially you and me. I mean, I haven't taken physics since like 11th grade in college. I mean, 11th grade in high school. And like, I didn't take calculus. I don't even know what calculus actually is. So if some guy starts like sending information to my brain, I wouldn't even know how to write it down.
Dude, that's further evidence, right? If they can just give us the equation, we don't even know what it means, but it's proven correct. How could we have found that out?
Yeah.
Unless they were real.
I want something black hole related.
Well, that was actually a bit from the Rendlesham Forest UFO sightings, was that one of the guys had like zeros and ones that were in his brain, and he wrote them all down. And then like a decade later, some student looked at it while he was giving a speech, and they were like, oh, that's binary. And they converted it from binary, and it was like a message. So that's used as a proof point for Rendlesham Forest actually having occurred, because this guy allegedly didn't know what binary was.
Right. Yeah. No idea.
Yeah. So, dude, would they just give it to us in binary?
Give it to us in binary.
That's even cool. You got to decode it. And then it's the secret to the universe.
That's 100% it.
I want them to tell us how we combine quantum mechanics and like general relativity. That would blow everyone's mind. Because
write that question down.
Because our liberal arts asses are not thinking of that ourselves.
No idea.
All right,
could not come up with a unifying theory.
We could not. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
So for our last clip, we talk a little bit about how we need to start looking more into the oceans and into stranger places.
Yes.
Yes, I do think it's an important thing, and if we claim to have the whole story of human history and prehistory, but have failed to investigate those 10 million square miles of prime real estate during the Ice Age that are now underwater, then we definitely don't have the whole picture of human history. And it's an area that we should be investigating much more thoroughly. We should be looking in precisely the places that archaeologists aren't looking today: underwater, in the Amazon rainforest, in the Sahara Desert, even in Antarctica. These are the places we should be looking.
I love the Antarctica one, once again, because of H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
At the Mountains of Madness, if you've read it, where there's a giant civilization there, or ancient civilization that has since died. So I do think that is a little fun. I'm also curious, are there things in that section of lands that are now underwater that would provide insights? Like, even without taking anything that Graham is saying into account, right? If we say that this is not real, I feel like there still would be interesting things.
Take off the pre-civilization, precursor civilization.
Yeah.
There is stuff for us to learn.
There's got to be shit down there, dude, because people were there at some point. They were
absolutely there.
Yeah, just like we can find shells and stuff in Tennessee. It's because Tennessee used to be covered in water, man.
And one of the other things that I think we really need to do deep dives into our genome, right? Which we've kind of already done. And one of the most fascinating things is that there was a period where humanity bottlenecked. Like, there were only like 5,000 to 10,000 human beings left on the planet. What caused that? What happened? Why did our genetic code drop so much?
I'm also curious what the impact of that is on a species when, because just thinking about diversification within the gene pool, that could not have been good for us.
No, they say, I believe it's 50,000 people that, like, if we were ever to do interplanetary like seeding and stuff like that, you would want 50,000 people for genetic variety.
Yeah, which is exactly why in Interstellar they had a bunch of embryos that were frozen so that we could actually continue to have diversity in our species. Otherwise, we would just like die,
right?
Which is slightly problematic.
So, I mean, we are the progeny of a very small group of humans that were left. I don't know what the genetic, I don't know if we can tell how long ago this was, but something happened to Homo sapien where our numbers declined precipitously.
So we could have been wiped out, and you would not be able to listen to this wonderful podcast, which would have been a shame for, I think, the universe at large.
Was it Noah's Ark, baby? Come on.
maybe the deluge.
The deluge, baby.
The deluge, which is a fun word.
So, all right, Paul, I think most everyone kind of gets my thinking about it. I find it very fascinating. It's something that, I don't have a lot of qualms with as a theory. I particularly like this kind of precursor civilization idea. Within a very short time throughout the world, a whole bunch of civilizations just kind of pop up with all this general same, language and animal husbandry and agriculture and irrigation techniques and building large monuments and blah, 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 right? I find it fascinating. So as somebody who didn't know all that much about it, I mean, what do you think?
I have a hard time seeing this happening, right? Because the human species and the human experience has not changed in 12,000 years, right? We still have the same brains. And one of my favorite, quotes about history is that if you ever want to know what it felt like or what people thought back then, just think about what you would do in that scenario, right? Because we're inherently the same creatures. I think it's very strange for a civilization to be severely impacted in that sort of way. And then their response is, well, we're going to send a few people out to all these random places and then like show them fire, right? Well, not literally show them fire, but metaphorically show them fire.
Right. Yeah. Be a Prometheus, right?
Exactly. So to me, it almost makes more sense from just purely the logic within the theory that it was aliens. I'm a bigger fan of ancient alien theory than ancient civilization theory. I think it was what I've realized. I think it's cooler. Yeah, because to me, it makes more sense that there is an alien species that comes down.
You would rather listen to Zachariah Sitchin than Graham Hancock.
I really enjoy Sitchin's episodes. I think the aliens is just more fun. I don't know. I think that's cooler for me.
I mean, listen, aliens are more fun, but I love humanity. And so that it was humans doing the reteaching, dude. I just love that. I just absolutely love that.
It's just one of those things where whenever I'm listening to stuff like this, I'm turning off a portion of my brain, right? And you just kind of like let it wash over you.
Yeah,
I think it's a big part of it. And if I'm going to do that, like if I'm going to put in the effort, just like let it wash over me.
You need it to be something bigger than other humans.
Yeah, it feels too normy. Yeah, it's like, no, dude, we figured out longitude and we're just like walked up to some like old school civilization, right? 10,000 years ago. We're like, guys, this is how you make a map. Okay. Yeah. Like that's not as fun for me as someone came from Andromeda and showed us these things.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I stand on it. Chris, scale of 1 to 5 Great Pyramids. How do you rank Graham Hancock's episode?
Dude, at least 4 Great Pyramids. I will always love Graham Hancock. I will listen to him all the time. He didn't really say anything new for me here, and I hope I've been able to at least add a little depth to the clips that you've gathered.
I don't know if he could say anything new because I think you know everything he has to say.
I know a lot of it.
I think you know the entire outline of his worldview.
I know quite a bit of it.
Yeah, unless there's something that he like just started making up since COVID hit. I'm not sure if there'd be something new to share with you at this point. So
all I need to know is I need to get Before America.
Yeah, no, that's the book Before America that you can check out. The Mormon of the archaeology community, Graham Hancock. I'll give him 3 out of 5 pyramids. I don't believe it, but he at least attempts to provide evidence for a lot of the stuff he's saying, which a lot of people on Coast to Coast don't do. So something.
He's got whole books of evidence, right? And it's not like narrative storytelling. It's like he gets pictures and he talks to experts. And I mean, you got to give Graham, he has made a living off of being called a crank and a what is it? Crypto archaeologist,
pseudo archaeologist, and pseudo historian. Yeah.
Yeah. And like, that's got to be
as a pseudo podcaster.
As a pseudo podcaster, that has got to be like, that's not an easy life, right? Like that he is.
Well, I don't know. He seems to be having fun. He's traveling around a lot.
He's doing fine. I'm not saying that. But I'm just saying somebody who wants to be respected by the community being called a crank and a hack most of his life.
So I think I would have more sympathy for that portion. And I don't disagree with you. I'm sure that's not super fun to be called a crank or a hack. I think the fact that he's not actually an archaeologist or a historian, that he didn't go to school for those things, I think that's why I don't have quite as much sympathy as maybe I would, because it's more a community that he's not necessarily a part of, that he's attacking, versus being inside of it and then getting shut down. Because he does talk about knowing, archaeologists who are like ran out of town on a rail for saying things like he says.
Yeah.
I don't know who those people are, but that's one of those things where like you go to school and you write your dissertation that you spend 8 years on and now your career is destroyed.
That's the thing, right? And I think that's why I always leave a little bit of room for belief, that this is an interesting theory, because, dude, science is incredibly conservative. Like, not the science community. Like, if you come with this brand new idea, no one's going to believe you, and you will have to fight tooth and nail to get just a little bit of traction if you're coming up with revolutionary ideas.
Well, and that's also by design, right? It's a feature, not a flaw of the process.
Right.
And that's the way that it works, so that you have to prove it over and over again. It has to be able to be reciprocated, and that's how things go. So a lot of times
there's germs everywhere, and they're on your hands, and you have to wash your hands before you perform surgery.
You know what I love about that, though, is that, like, yes, people don't believe things when it first comes out a lot of times, and you do have to prove it, but no one talks about the billion of theories that were complete and utter
completely
bullshit.
Been debunked.
Yeah, you don't hear about those because they were wrong. You hear about the ones that were right that changed the game. So I don't know. I think listening to Coast as much as I do, I'm like, a lot of things are wrong because they all can't be right.
Mostly wrong.
We can't have ancient aliens who are behind the pyramids and an ancient civilization who was behind the pyramids.
One of them has to be right.
It can't be both reptoids in a hollow earth and grays that came down in UFOs.
Right.
It has to be one of them. So there's a lot of conflicting theories.
Or more than likely neither, right? Do have to leave the possibility that it's none of the above.
Well, the best part is that there are actually grave sites that are right next to the pyramids, where on like the ancient headstones, it's like, these are the guys that built the pyramids and they're dead now. It's like, we know where they are, like where they're buried. They buried them right next to the pyramids.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Who knows? But that has been our part 2 of Graham Hancock. Chris, I learned a lot from you this time. You had a lot of Graham Hancock knowledge for sure.
A little bit of Graham Hancock knowledge. I prefer not being the lead, though. So let's get back to something I don't know. Next episode.
We'll get even more obscure next episode. I'm thinking maybe a numerology podcast could be a little fun.
I know nothing about numerology, and I would love to hear just a little taste of it.
Just a little taste. It's interesting. We will certainly get there. Come back and listen. We love you all. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you soon.
Later.